So this is a lot different this morning. Normally, I come out here, uh, let the dogs out, go fix their breakfast while they're out running around, and then I come out here in the pool. And after they've eaten, bring them back outside, come out in the pool, and watch them run around the yard. Um, and normally, because Brooks was with me in the truck all the time, we would take off or get up about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning. That way we had plenty of time to get him out running around before got stuck going down the road for a few hours. And so I woke up this morning just out of habit, but there was really no reason to get up, because for the first time in over 26 years there's no dogs at the house. It's pretty quiet. I guess that empty nester syndrome or something. Not with kids, but with dogs. I don't know, but making this video because um, memories fade over time, and I'm looking at some pictures and remembering some things about about the dogs, both Brooks and Rika. But I just wanted to make this video mainly for me and my wife to, save the memories while they're fresh in our mind. Because unfortunately, getting older, and one day our mind's going to be empty like this yard. So there's a few things that a lot of people don't know about Brooks. He was born at Brooks Kennels in Dallas, Texas. The owner of Brooks Kennels was Brent Brooks. He was a former Navy SEAL. At his kennel, he trained or raised and bred dogs to be used as service dogs. There was a big emphasis on the bloodlines, making sure they didn't have anything hereditary like hip dysplasia, cancers, all that kind of stuff. And so that was a big priority in their breeding process, the dogs that they bred and stuff. And then Brooks came up here to Illinois and was trained. Most of the dogs were trained for a year or more. Brooks was about 7 months. He was doing really good in the training, and then most of the veterans that receive the dogs are from different places across the country. And since I lived locally, they figured, well, any training he needs, additional training he needs, since I live locally, we can, kind of fine tune things and everything. So that's why he completed his training early. And he didn't need much work. I mean, he was pretty solid when I got him at after 7 months of training. And Brent Brooks came to our graduation and brought a dog that was a diabetic service dog that was actually Brooks's dad. I don't know if they, in the dog world, they use like sire and dam or whatever, but it was his dad. So that was pretty cool. I got to meet Brent, and then we got to meet Brooks's dad and stuff, and who was a working service dog. And Brooks's sister, she finished her training later on, after about a year, and she went in a different class with a veteran in Oklahoma that lives in Oklahoma City. That dog's name is Gracie. She's out there still doing good. So that's something that a lot of people don't know, even that know about him being a service dog and everything. They don't know that part of the history, And he came from a great line of dogs, and it was kind of cool that we got to meet his dad and stuff, and then we got to meet Brent and everything. Brent later ended up committing suicide, but he did a lot of good in his life, beforehand. And I was sitting there scrolling through some of these pictures off Brooks's Facebook page, so I'm going to look at some of them. So, oh no, it disappeared. So this is my old iPhone. This the picture I had of him, goofy old dog. Let me get this open. I'm looking at some of the pictures on Facebook, and this picture right here. We were down in Tennessee, and this part of the stick here was probably about this big around, and all that red stuff on there is blood from Brooks. So we were down there north of Chattanooga, and kind of out in the middle of nowhere. We were playing fetch behind the truck stop, and the stick, when I threw it, it was coming down like straight up and down. It wasn't going sideways. It was coming straight up and down. Right when his mouth came down over it, it hit the ground, and he pulled his head back up, and his mouth was wide open, and the stick was still hanging there, and I was like, oh crap. And he shook, and the stick came out, and I was kind of panicking because we were out in the middle of nowhere. I didn't know what it had done to any damage. I knew there was some blood in his mouth and blood on the stick and stuff, and luckily my aunt lived in that area, my Aunt Brenda, and was able to get a hold of her. She came and got us, took us to the vet, and stayed there with us until we were able to get back to the truck. But so dogs have a soft tissue palate that covers their airway, and keeps food and water and stuff from going into their airway when they're eating and drinking. That stick had punctured completely through that and went down in his airway and scraped his airway. The vet, when Brooks was still knocked out, she took me back there, and they had a kind of a blade, kind of like what we use to intubate humans, and she opened up his airway completely and showed me both sides of that flap, and then showed me the scrape down in the airway and everything. And it was a scary time. Luckily, he just had some painkillers for a while and had the minimum food for a while, but so it all worked out. But man, it was scary. It was because getting in a situation when you're out away from home and then something happens, and and you're in a semi, so you can't just drive to the local vet or whatever, but it all worked out. He was okay, and everything worked out, but we never played fetch with sticks anymore after that one. So this is some of the stuff I started carrying initially on the truck. I carried in that backpack, had a first aid kit, some wet wipes to clean them up a little bit, some toys, a water bowl and water bottle and everything. And there's our girl Rika. We lost her a few months ago, April 1st. And boy loved catching or finding sticks, man. He was like a beaver, man. He just loved, and then he'd chew on them like a beaver for sure. And this year, they had been romping and biting at each other and all kinds of stuff. And when we said something, they just, both of them looking so innocent and everything, that's the way they always did. It was like, who, us? We weren't doing nothing. Yeah, they were both good about that. One of my trucks. Some of the different events we went to and everything. This was actually a Miss Illinois pageant contestant. We got to go backstage with them. She had just finished up her talent show thing, and we got to go backstage with all them and speak to the audience there before the rest of the competition. That's another event we were speaking out with a bunch of politicians and stuff, and we did a lot of that. A whole lot of that. Speaking about pretending to be innocent and everything, see these two? Look, just the sweetest little angels. But before that, this is what they were doing. Look at that. And I was in the garage filming that. Look at that sweet, innocent lab. He's trying to kill our shepherd. I was in the picture. I was in the garage filming this, and taking pictures of it. And they couldn't see me, and they were just going at each other, and both of them got their mouths wide open trying to kill each other. And then when I spoke up and said something, then they both stopped and just looked at it like, "Oh, who, us? No, we're just out here smelling the roses, man. Nothing going on with us." Yeah, they were always like that. We met, these were some dogs, and a woman that was with them, that we met them at a truck stop, and got to play with them for a while. Other events. This is my wife, Beth, and I can't remember the dinosaur's name. That was at, I think, DuQuoin State Fair. Went around there. Some more different events. I think this was a parade. If you notice, there's kind of a common theme of him chewing on sticks and stuff. I don't remember where that was at with the horses and everything. Hadesburg, I think, Mississippi. Car place. I don't know if the picture's in here or not, but I got a picture of him at a hotel, and it really shows the difference between him. This was at a Springfield, Illinois, cemetery up there. He hated baths. He loved to be in the water, but he hated baths. He didn't really care for Santa Claus, because Santa Claus didn't have any treats. Yeah. Different random places we were at. He was always running around, just being a big goofy dog. And the people that knew him as a service dog, they didn't really get to see this side of him. This was the guy, Lieutenant Dan, on Forrest Gump. Him and his organization donate houses to veterans with a lot of physical disabilities, smart homes and all that kind of stuff. And we were at one of those. That's Kevin and his dog. We got to go to one of those groundbreakings for one of the houses here fairly locally. Big old stick. He was happy as heck whenever he could have a big old stick in his mouth. This is a dog we found in Indiana. Some truck driver had tied it up out in the back and left a big old bag of dog food and just left it there. So we got talked to the people at the truck stop, and somebody ended up taking him home. But Ricka, she was not a graceful swimmer. She liked water as long as it was knee deep. Other than that, she wasn't much of a swimmer. And I got this message. We were at a truck stop in Pennsylvania or Ohio, and there was we were not at a truck stop. We were at like a Waffle House or something near a truck stop, and this woman who was sitting at a booth across from us with her husband, I noticed she kept looking over every once in a while, and she never said anything. But when she walked out, she walked over and laid this napkin on my table and smiled and walked away. And it says, "I'm glad your dog found you, and I'm glad you found your dog. Thank you for your service." It was pretty cool. Yeah, just a lot of, man, we found so many different trails and stuff like at truck stops. Just a lot of times there are woods or fields or something behind it. You just go out walking, and you find a trail, and then start following the trail along. And man, we found so many places. And the truck stops I'd been to many times over the years, but never got out roaming around. And with him, we got to explore and find all kinds of really cool stuff. Really cool places and everything. And he was always good about, like, if you got to if you're at a trail, especially like an actual trail, like here in the Shawnee National Forest or whatever, there's a lot of intersecting trails and stuff, and he'd usually be going up ahead of you and everything. But when he would get to an intersection of a trail, he would stop and look back at you, and then and either wait on me to get there, or I would just point to which direction, and so, if it was a crossroad and we were kind of this way, and I wanted him to continue on, I would just point for him to go straight. Otherwise, I'd point for him to go left or right, and then he would take off on down the trail and everything. And if he ever got out of sight of me, he would turn around and come back and wait, on me and everything. And he did it. He was a pretty tricky dog, though. Just 'cause sometimes, I remember this one time in West Virginia in particular, we found a really cool trail, and he hadn't gotten ahead of me or anything. He was just 20 feet up ahead of me, and it was a straight trail. It didn't have any curves or anything in this section. And he had stopped, and he would just turn around and looking at me, and I was thinking, okay, cool. And about that time, I ran into this big old spider web all over my face, and I was batting it, trying to get it out of me, and I could have sworn that dude was laughing, man. I know he saw that dang spider web, and he walked underneath it, and he just sat there waiting for me to get hit by him. But yeah, pretty sneaky little dog. And I don't remember where these are all at. Here's a strip joint in West Virginia. That boy liked girls, man. He really did. Actually, he did. He was trained, well, except for Josh. All the other trainers were women, and he would. He was a sucker for a woman's voice, man. Because in training them, they'd all be all excited. Oh, good boy, in that higher pitched voice. And man, he was just a sucker for girls. And a lot of people that only saw him as a service dog. They never got to see the goofy dog he was. Always loved this picture here. It was pretty cool. This was up north somewhere. I can't remember exactly where, but up north somewhere. This is when I was teaching him on the paddleboard. There's a place, command for a place. I'll talk more about it in a second, but I was teaching him to use that little mat as a place, and then I put that on there, and then started working with him on the actual paddleboard, and then we went from there. And the place thing, that gets me to something else I was thinking about. So when I first got Brooks, I was driving locally hauling coal, and it wasn't a great deal for him. I mean, I was in a little day cab, and at the time he was about 50 pounds, and it was okay. There was kind of enough room for him. There was a few places I got to stop at to let him out during the day and everything, but it wasn't the best situation. My other trucks driving over the road, you had the big sleeper, and there's a big section on the floor between the seats and the bed, that I had his bed laying there, and he can get up and move around. He could get up on my bed. He had a lot more room to stretch out than he did when we was hauling coal. So I knew the hauling coal thing was going to have to come to an end, because he was getting to the point where he was too big for that truck, and it wasn't the best life for him. And so we left there, and we went to Snyder, went to work for them. They had a dedicated thing for a part-time driver. You only had to work 8 days a month, but you could work up to 30 if you wanted to. And so we could kind of set our own schedule. But when we went to work for Snyder, and if you don't know, Snyder's a billion-dollar company. They've got like 15,000 trucks, and just a huge company. One of the biggest, if not the biggest, in the country. But when we went to work for them, they had never allowed any dogs in the truck, and at that point they hadn't even had service dogs in the truck. So it was I had to talk to people from all the different department heads, and they were asking me all these questions about, well, what if this happens, and what do you do in this situation, and what about this, and what about that, and they let us come up there and go to orientation, and so the place thing. You start out when you're training a dog, it's a board or something that's kind of elevated, so there's a clear difference between when they're on the place board and when they're off. And then after they're good at it, you can work it down to where I just had this little piece of carpet that I would use so I could take it with me to different places. But the deal with the placemat and the place command is if I put him in a sit stay or a down stay, he wasn't allowed to move at all, because even if he was just move one paw like this, well, in the dog's mind, well, if I could do that, I can do this, and if I could do this, I can get up and walk. So a sit stay is absolutely like a statue, or a down stay, and that's good if you need him. I need you to stay right here. I need to go do this for 30 seconds and then come back. But to sit like in orientation or anything, any length of time, when they're on the placemat, they can sit down, they can lay down, they can roll over on their side, they can stand up, they can turn around, they can do whatever they want to do as long as they don't get off that placemat. So I went to orientation. We're in the classroom with everybody else, and I was sitting in the back, and I had this placemat there. And during the day, in breaks between classes, different department heads and stuff, they were coming down talking to us and everything. And the last day, the guy giving orientation, he came up to me and told me that, hey, he said, I really was not looking forward to you guys being in the class. He said, because a dog in the class is going to be a dog's going to be back there barking. It's going to be running all over the room. It's going to be this huge distraction. He said, but to be honest, within 30 minutes of class starting, I forgot there was even a dog back here. I never had 1 minute of problem out of him and everything. And I said, well, I told everybody that's the way it would be. And they said, yeah, but we didn't really believe it. And they had me getting up, showing how I get him in and out of the truck and everything. And they had built, so on the beds of the truck, there's a seatbelt, female parts of the seatbelt buckle, and then there's a harness against the wall that you can, if you're driving team, you could put that seatbelt harness over the top of the person laying down, so if you get in a wreck, they won't get thrown from it. But they bought us a really nice harness with a seatbelt thing on it that had the metal part of the seatbelt, so it could clip into that buckle, which is right on the edge of my bed, and he had room the leash was long enough he can get up, move around, all that kind of stuff. They were worried about, well, what if he bumps it into gear whenever you're stopped somewhere or something, and I had to show them a lot to kind of assure them that wouldn't happen and everything. But so they ended up, Snyder, this huge company, ended up letting us in there. Of course, they had the potential to be sued if they didn't and everything, but let us in there, and they set a policy for service dogs to be working with them, and Brooks was the standard, because there's so many fake dogs, fake, somebody throw a service dog vest on them and everything, and just try to get away with that stuff. But his obedience and his level of even just his level of attention to me the whole time and everything, all that, that was, from that point forward, that was their standard for how a service dog should be, if they hired him into the company. And we would go into restaurants and stuff. A lot of times, especially if people came in after us, we would get up and to walk out of the restaurant to leave, and you hear all these whispers like, wow, I didn't even know there was a dog here, And sometimes even the people that were sitting there before us, they didn't even notice us coming in, and he'd always go right underneath the table and everything and just lay down. And so he was really good at that, just uh, he not making his presence known. He was just there to do his job, and that was it, you know. So he was really good at that. But one thing he would do anytime he's laying down anywhere, when he gets up, he'll take a few steps and he'll stop, and then he'll shake, and um, I guess get all the dirt or whatever off of him. But while I was in orientation, there was this lady. She had saw because the way the tables were when she was walking up to her table, she saw him under the table, and she was telling the people that she was with that, oh, that's disgusting, allowing a dog in a restaurant, and all this kind of stuff. And I get it, I could see why some people would say that, but no more than disgusting than most of the people that are in some of the places. But anyway, so we were in this restaurant, and I knew I had heard everything she said, and she made some more comments, and while we were eating, she was kept looking at us, kind of glaring at us and everything. So what I did is, as soon as we got up, instead of me hesitating at the table and letting him shake and everything, because I knew he was going to do it, as soon as we got up and I got out of my seat and he came underneath the table, I walked straight without pausing at all. I walked straight until I got right by that lady, and then I paused for just a second, and Brooks shook right on cue, man. Got all his dog cooties all over and everything. I loved him, man. And yeah, she had to fit after that, but it was too late. It got my little revenge on her talking crap about my dog. But yeah, one of the things that a lot of people didn't get to see is, oh, he's such a sweet dog. He would never hurt anybody or anything. And I got to see him be aggressive a couple times, and if I didn't know the dog, he would have stopped me in my tracks. So, the one time I definitely remember was we were in Kingdom City, Missouri at this truck stop, and I had seen this homeless dude earlier the day in the restaurant. He had gotten enough change to go get a cup of coffee, and he was sitting in there drinking his coffee and everything, and man, he looked like he hadn't had a shower in a month and everything. But me and Brooks had done our normal thing. We got out and roamed around that night and everything, and went to bed. Got up the next morning like normal, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I got out to let him out. 99.9% of the time he was off leash, unless it was just really too close to a highway or something. Then I'd put a leash on him, but that was very rare. I usually got to find a place out away from everything. And so we were out walking around, and there was this substation, power station thing. It wasn't very big, but it was there. And Brooks was walking around and just sniffing and playing and looking for something to pee on and stuff. And man, he stopped all of a sudden, and he went into that aggressive mode. And when he does, man, his chest swells real up and his arms puff out. He kind of gets that bulldog stance, and all his hair stands on his body. It makes him look twice as big as he is. And he's got a bark that is so deep and so aggressive, man. And he stopped, and he was sitting there doing that, and I came around the corner to see what he was barking at, and that homeless guy had been laying there just on the ground in a sleeping bag, and he was up on his knees facing Brooks, scared crapless. And I apologized to the guy, and I took Brooks off and let him use the bathroom and stuff. And then once later, after I got him back in the truck, I felt bad for the dude, man. And I went back and I gave that guy $20 so he can get him some breakfast and everything, because I felt bad. Brooks scared the crap out of it. Brooks scared me, and I know Brooks, and I wasn't laying there asleep when Brooks started that. So and there was a few other times that he did that too, and man, you wouldn't think that sweet little innocent dog could sound so dang mean and look so mean. But and when we were doing bite training, had this tug, and doing it with our shepherd Ricka and with Brooks, and Ricka was doing it because she was having fun and because she knew that's what we wanted to do and everything. So she'd hit it pretty hard and stuff, and she had fun. But Brooks loved it, man. And when he would hit that tug, man, he would go all in on that tug, and he loved the bite, man. He really did. So he could have put a hurting on somebody if he wanted to, but he was really super good at. See, like when I started, when I was driving, before Brooks and everything, I was driving over the road. You tried not to spend too much time outside because there's always people, trying to get money off of you or whatever, and then I had ran into a couple situations where they were getting to the point where they're escalating and it could have ended up being violent, and luckily I was able to kind of diffuse the situation, and nothing happened. But so you learn very quickly that you just get out of the truck, go into the truck stop, do what you got to do, hang out in there a little while if you need to, just get out and stretch your legs and then walk straight back to the truck. But with Brooks, I was having to be out walking around, for an hour, 2 hours or more, making sure he got plenty of time to be out and be a dog and stretch his legs and burn off some energy and everything and just have fun. So, but I never really had any problems with anybody when I had him with me. I mean, he was 70 pounds, so he was a pretty good sized dog, but most people aren't scared of a Labrador, but everybody kind of kept their distance, and it was a big change being in the truck stop area without him and with him. You could tell he was making a difference. And there was only one time I know for sure that he made a difference. The rest, I think people just didn't approach us because of him, but we were out in the back field at this truck stop and just out doing our thing. When I had him out running around like that, it was just, I was a 12-year-old boy playing with my dog, just out there having a good time. And this big old black dude had nothing to do with him being black. He just was. He was walking straight towards us, and he really had no reason to be out there other than us. And as he approached, Brooks had been out playing, and as he approached, Brooks came up and circled around beside me and came into a heel position and was standing there. And the dude kind of stopped for a second, and he took a few more steps forward, and he said, "Will that dog bite?" And I said, "Well, there's a saying in the canine world, start shit, get bit." And that dude looked at us for a couple seconds, man, for like 5 seconds. He just sit there and look at us, and he never said another word. He just turned around and walked off. And I think a big part of it, that deterrence factor in that situation, was Brooks' obedience. If he still would have been out running around playing, just full puppy dog mode, the dude probably would have thought, "Oh, that dog's not going to hurt me." But the way that when that guy approached and Brooks came up and right there in a perfect heel position, I think that guy was thinking, okay, the dog's got some training. And then I said what I said, and I think it stopped something that could have been a problem. He might have just been out there trying to hustle me for some money, but you never know. And the situation was completely avoided. And there was another situation where this dude, I'm not gonna tell the whole story because just to get to the point, he came up to my truck and he was kind of arguing, "Oh, you took my spot, and I was going to park here, and you came up here and take my spot, and you're going to have to pull." Well, Brooks came off of his bed and he came up there and he poked his head up over my legs because I had the door open, and he poked his head up over my legs, and the dude was like, and he saw Brooks and he said, "And that's okay, because I'm going to go to the truck stop across the road and park." And I just laughed and said, "Okay, you have a good night." But Brooks wasn't, he was just like, he heard a voice and he's like, "Oh, somebody's here to play with me," But it stopped the guy in his tracks, and he's like, okay, I'm gonna go over here. But yeah, a lot of cool things. Okay, I'm skipping forward past some pictures because this is getting long already. But his obedience. Brooks loved playing fetch, man. That, oh my God, that boy lived and breathed for fetch. But to show you his obedience, if you could just understand the desire, this just overwhelming desire this dude had to play fetch. It was just in his blood to play fetch. But to show you his obedience, I put him in a sit stay while I went to go get the toy out of my bag, and I forgot to release him. I forgot to tell him he was free, and I threw it, and he watched it and watched it and watched it, and it hit the ground, and he just sits there looking at it. Oh, every fiber of his being wanted to get up out of that sit stay position and catch that thing, but he didn't. And then right about this point, I forgot. Oh, I forgot to tell him he was free, and oh man, he was just, his body was trembling, man. And then I finally told him he was free, and he took off, and I felt bad, but yeah, it just shows you. I mean, it's hard to express in words how strong his desire was to play fetch, and but also how good his obedience was, that in a situation like that, when there's nothing else in your life you would rather do than play fetch, but your obedience is strong enough that it overrides that. And this is the thing with the service dog vest, the difference between, like I was saying in that video, that initial video when I said he was gone, the difference between with the vest and without it. So we got in this hotel room. He's got his service dog vest on. He does what a service dog does. He goes out of the way, lays on the floor, everything's good to go. I walked over there, took his service dog vest off, and as soon as I stepped out of the way, right on bed, in full puppy dog mode. I mean, the difference was night and day with his vest on and without his vest. It was great. And I don't know. There's all kinds of pictures in here. I don't know what all they are. There is this one video I like, especially for the people that don't didn't get to see him. You only got to see him in the service dog mode. No, that's not it. Where is it at? Oh no. There's lots of videos of him playing. Are you ready to play fetch? Yeah, he loved to play fetch. And seeing a place like that, I mean, that's the road coming in the truck stop, but I never had any problems worrying about him. Because in situations like this, there were times where he would circle out, you know, or trying to catch it, and be that border between the grass and the concrete. He'd be like a football player, an NFL player, trying not to run off the out of bounds and stuff. And he was really solid on that boundary. He knew he wasn't supposed to get off the concrete, and I mean off the grass, and he was really good with that stuff. I don't know. That video, I'm gonna pause this for a second and find it. Okay, here it is. Most people, there was a big group of people that only knew him as a service dog, and they never got to see this side of him. And like I said, this was 99% of his life. That's a strap that he's got in his mouth. It's just a cut off piece of a ratchet strap. And for a long time, that was his favorite toy. Which made it nice for me because I could just fold it in half and stick it in my pocket and everything, and I had it with me every time I wanted to go play. But yeah, that was his favorite toy for a while. That's that little strap. He loved that. But yeah, he and with running across other people and stuff with dogs, Brooks was so balanced, um, like psychologically, emotionally balanced and everything. You know, you see a lot of people could see that, hey, that dog's being aggressive or that dog's being submissive. And, you know, like maybe at that point the dog's barking or growling, you know, oh, that dog's being aggressive. But they don't, towards another dog, but they don't see the 20 other signs. The communication between two dogs is so subtle, so subtle. I got lucky and I was able to do a dog psychology class. It was about a 3-week class. Got to go to that and learned so much from it. But yeah, the communication is the way the dogs communicate, with subtle body languages. And like I said before, a dog gets to that point where a lot of people will say, hey, that dog is this or that. There's already 20 other signs that they've missed, you know, because they just didn't know. But Brooks was so balanced and he was so good at diffusing situations. Like, this has happened many times, because we get out there and we get some other idiot out there with their dog, and they're not watching it, or it's either off leash or on a leash that they don't have a good hold of, or you know, whatever. And this a perfect example of it is, we were early in the morning one morning. It's still dark. Brooks was out just running around in front of this truck stop. Some lady had pulled in there with a van, and we were just out there minding our business. You know, he was roaming around. I was probably about 20-30 feet away from him, and watching him, and this lady opened up her van to get something out of the back of it, and when she did, a German Shepherd, a big old German Shepherd, jumped out of the back and headed straight for Brooks, and he was just hauling ass, and Brooks just slowly sat down. And I mean, and this happened in just like 2 seconds tops between her opening the door and the dog being on Brooks. But he just sat down slowly. He kind of looked over at me out of the corner of his eye, and he looked back at the dog. And I couldn't rush up there to him. I couldn't call him back to me. Dogs have a natural prey drive. You know, if something's running, they're just naturally going to chase it. So I would have made the situation worse. So I just had to. And at this point, because we'd had similar situations, I knew I could trust him to handle it. But that dog was all aggressive out there, barking and everything. He came right up on Brooks. And Brooks was just like a stone, man. He was just so... There was nothing. He didn't get aggressive at all. He didn't get submissive at all. He was just a rock, man. And that dog came up on him, and he stopped right when he got up on him, and he kind of looked, and the dog was still displaying all kinds of signs of aggression, but Brooks stopped him in his tracks, man. And the dog was kind of confused, and the dog started to a little bit kind of relax his body positioning and everything. And right about that time, the lady got up on him, and she grabbed him, and then he started getting aggressive again at Brooks. And Brooks just sat there, man, didn't blink an eye, just didn't faze him at all. And the woman took the dog back to the van, and me and Brooks just got up and continued on his way. You know, I told him he was a good boy and all that stuff. But man, he was so good at that. And Beth got to experience that. I was out on the road after I retired him, and she was camping with our friend Betty in the RV, and similar situation again with a German Shepherd, and our German Shepherd was there. Beth had her on a leash, and our German Shepherd was barking and trying to get to that other German Shepherd because she wanted to protect, you know, Brooks and everything. And but Beth also had known how good Brooks is at diffusing those situations, and he did the same thing, man. He just like a rock, man. And it kind of confused the dog and kind of diffused the situation. And they got, Beth has said many times, if he would have attacked, she was going to drop the leash on Ricka and let Ricka go help him. But yeah, man, it was scary because if things could have gone wrong, then Brooks or the other dog could have gotten hurt. But when those things happen in just a blink of an eye, I mean, like you said, the last thing, if I called Brooks to me, he would have came running to me, but then that would have just increased the prey drive in the dog, and then there dang sure would have been something that happened. And so it's scary when it happens, but it's also so beautiful, man, just to see just his presence and his calmness and his, I don't know, man, I can't describe it in words, but just to see that, to see an animal be able to do that. The dog's coming at you full-blown aggressive and gonna hurt you, and he just, like I said, doesn't show any signs of submission or anything or aggression, but it's a beautiful thing to watch, man. It's scary every time it happened, but it's a beautiful thing to watch. And his ability to do that, I've not seen any other dogs ever be able to do it like he could. I've seen other dogs diffuse situations, but not like that. And he was good at it. And Ricka, our German Shepherd, she's in the theory that kill them all and let God sort them out. She don't play. But Brooks was a different animal, man. Really a different animal. He was able to. Man, it was a beauty to see him watch him do that. And then I mentioned in that video about when I said that, what had happened to Brooks and why we had to put him down, about how he, living in the moment thing. And one perfect example of this is we had, we've been driving, we were out in Oklahoma, going to pick up a load in Oklahoma. It had been raining for like 3 days, man. And when it's raining, especially when you got a dog in the truck, and I got to get him out. And I don't just take him out and let him pee. I let him run and go out and explore and do his normal deal. But I got to be out in the rain with him too. And then we're both getting back in the truck, and now I got a wet dog in the truck, and I got like 17 towels trying to dry him off and dry out the truck. Oh, it just sucks, man. But we've been dealing with this for 3 days, and we were coming into Oklahoma, to the place in Oklahoma where we were picking up this load, and it was still raining when we pulled in there. And I went in and checked in with the people, the shipper, and they were saying, yeah, well, that they had gotten delayed, and now it was going to be a few extra hours before they loaded me. And I said, okay. And I was walking back out to the truck to get Brooks. They had a grass field out there. I was going to let him out there. And I was walking back to get him, and getting him out of the truck and setting him on the ground. The whole time out there, I'm thinking, okay, now that's going to delay me at least 3 hours, and then that's going to put me here tonight as far as I'm going to make it. And I was calculating the trip planning and everything, this whole load, and got him out of the truck, and I was walking out to the field, and right when I got past the nose of the truck, he stopped, and it kind of stopped me, just because I noticed he had stopped. So I stopped and I looked down at him to see what he was doing, and the sun was over here, and he was just standing there, had his head tilted, just soaking in that sun, And so in all this stuff, I complained for 3 days, it's raining, it sucks, it won't quit raining, and out. But after I went in the building, it quit raining and the sun came out. And I was so much in my head about, oh man, now this is going to mess up my whole plan. I got to refigure everything out. And there so much trapped in my head. I didn't even realize it. Not only had it quit raining, but the sun was out for the first time in 3 days. But he wasn't worried about all that. He wasn't worried about the load being late, and he was, shipping late and all that kind. He was just right now, right this second, the sun is shining, and it feels so good after 3 days of being in rain. And he was just in that moment, totally in that moment. Nothing else mattered. He had to pee. It had been a few hours since we'd been on the truck and all that kind of stuff. And he was looking forward to getting in the grass and peeing and everything, and then going out and exploring and see what he could find. But right that second, right in that moment, all he cared about was the sun was out, and it felt good on his face. And so me and him both sit there with our heads tilted back, just hanging out for a few seconds, enjoying the sun, and then walked on. But it's things like that that he taught me about living in the moment and getting out of your head and all the crap in your head and everything, whether it's from PTSD or just stressful day or somebody's crap you're dealing with or whatever. That ability to just live in the moment. And when you can learn to do that, the world is a beautiful place, but it takes a lot of practice to do that. And living with him 24 hours a day for many years, I got a lot of practice at that. And he was constantly reminding me, especially in the beginning, to not worry about all the crap, just enjoy it right now, what we're doing right now. This is the only thing that matters in the world, is what right now, this moment. So I'm glad I got to experience all that. I'm glad I was able to learn all that from him. I was open-minded enough to learn it from him. I to see the beauty, and like I said, it got to the point where I was just like a 12-year-old kid playing with my dog, man. And so many adults are caught up in all their crap, man. And I get it. Life is stressful, especially when you have a family and everything. But to be able to just go out and just play, as a 40, 50-year-old man, to just get out there and play and have time. And I'd make up all kinds of stories. That Beth would call me while we were out, me and Brooks out roaming around, and she's like, "What you guys doing?" "Oh, he's out there." As a matter of fact, one of the videos on his Facebook page, I'm actually saying this, but "Oh, we're just out there. Brooks is on the trail or something." And she's, "Oh yeah, what's that?" "Well, he says it's a walrus, but I really don't think there's any walruses in Indiana, but that's what we're out here looking for right now, And so it was that 12-year-old boy in his imagination that had us out there looking for that walrus. It wasn't Brooks, but yeah, man, he was a good boy. I learned so much from him. I was told once that you don't get the dog, and this applied to Rika. It was said about Rika that you don't get the dog you want, you get the dog you need at that moment in your life. And Rika, we learned a lot from Rika. Some of it indirectly because of Rika. She was having a lot of behavioral problems when she was a puppy. She was trying to kill us, literally. And I had scars all over her arms. It was bad. But because of that, we had to take her to extreme canine. And normally they don't start training puppies till they're 4 months old, but they gave us an exception, and we did private puppy classes. And so we'd been telling these trainers, "Man, she's the devil in disguise, man. This dog is trying to kill us." And she'd go to her class, and she's a sweet little puppy, and she's playing, and the trainers are looking at us like, "Dude, this dog's like this big, She's not hurting nobody. She's not." But finally, after I think it was on like the third class, man, Laura, Rika was running around and just playing and everything like normal. And Laura reached down to grab her to direct her back over towards her or something like that. And man, Rika tried to kill her, man. And we were like, "Yes, that's it. See, we told you, we're not crazy, And like the next week in class, the trainers had like gloves and all kinds of stuff, because they seen the demon that she was. But and because of that, Extreme Canine also has a disabled veteran, which is where the same trainers train the service dogs. And so we got to find out about that program, and we got to later actually got to meet Brooks when they first got him to start training with him. He was just a like 10, 12 week old puppy, and then got to see him over the next several months. And then later I ended up going through that trauma resiliency class and ended up getting Brooks. So indirectly Rika helped us out, but directly Rika also helped us out, because another thing they used to always tell us was, if there's anxiety in the dog, then there's anxiety in the house. And Rika had a lot of anxiety early on, and a lot of that anxiety, unfortunately, I would have to say that was because of me. I was dealing with all my crap, and it was before I was just starting to get help and everything, and I wasn't a very good person. But Beth had a lot of anxiety and everything, and in order to deal with Rika's anxiety, we had to work on our anxiety, and so because of that, we had to start learning better ways to deal with our stuff and everything, and it changed our lives. Having Rika changed our lives directly and indirectly, and learning, Beth also went through the trainer class. I went through the trainer class, and like a dog psychology class and a lot of other classes, and we started learning so much. We had our little black lab Missy, and we had a Schnauzer Heidi before them, and we thought that they had led a good life, but we learned so much about dogs and what really makes them tick, and how to truly make them happy. And then we kind of felt bad that, man, these dogs we had thought we had taken such good care of, we really didn't meet all their needs and everything. So we learned a lot, but yeah, Rika was, I know those videos about Brooks, but Rika was a very special girl, and she definitely changed our lives. There's no doubt about that. And I was gone so much during a big chunk of the last 12 years that Rika was alive, and Beth was home alone, and Rika was always there to keep her safe, and man, both of those dogs, Rika and Brooks, I had other dogs, and Beth has had other dogs, and then we had the two dogs together. We bought Missy a couple months before we got married, so up until this point, our entire marriage, which be 26 years next month, our entire marriage, we've always had dogs, but and they were all good in their own ways, but nothing like these two, nothing like Rika and Brooks. They I don't think they could ever be topped. They were definitely there. They were the dogs that we needed. There's no doubt about that. For many different reasons, but man, yeah, Brooks, he man, I can make a 6-hour video talking about him, and I've already gone. This video is probably already getting up to an hour or more. But and Brooks also. I was at a safety class when I was hauling coal, and I tell this story because there's other situations where he did a similar thing, but I was at a safety class. We were there early, and there was a guy sitting in front of me I'd never met for that day, before that day, and Brooks was picking up a bad vibe from him, like the guy was having problems, and I could kind of tell by his actions and everything that, I could see a lot of the way I had been in him. And Brooks was looking at him and looking at me and looking at him and looking at me. And I kind of motioned for Brooks to go on up there to him. And he did. And the guy started petting him and everything. And we got to talking. And he said, "Yeah, I wanted to pet your dog, but he's a service dog," and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I started talking about what he was trained to do. And I said, he was picking up on you, and he was trying to do the same thing to you that he was trained to do. And then it opened up the conversation. We got to start talking, and the guy's like, "Yeah, man, I'm dealing with this, and this, and having all these problems." And I was, at that point, I was an open book. Anytime somebody wanted to talk, I was an open book, and everything that I had done and things that I had experienced dealing with the depression and anxiety and stuff, and then things I did for help and everything. So because of Brooks, kind of got him to open up, and hopefully he seemed like he was going to go get some help, and hopefully he went on to do that. But there were many times over the years being out on the road and being around random places, and especially 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, somebody's working a late shift and they're outside smoking a cigarette, taking a break or whatever, and strike up a random conversation, and then they start opening up and everything. And just like the first time I asked for help, first time I told somebody I needed help, the biggest thing they did was just made it seem like it was okay. Like it was okay to get help. You're not a freak, you're not weak, you're not this. You're having problems, go get help, And I was able to have that same conversation with other people because of Brooks, and because we were out roaming around in all these random places that we never otherwise would have been. So he helped out a lot of other people too. And my sister said something about that the other day. He's helped out all of us more than he'll ever know. I mean, he's helped out a lot of people, at least getting them started going. And so he was good. And I don't know, man. I don't know how. One of the things they told us early on when getting these dogs, we had to go through a 3-week trauma resiliency program, and during that 3 weeks, you're learning a lot of ways to better ways to deal with and move on from the problems you're having. But you're also working with the dogs at the same time. And one of the things that they told us, and I took to heart, was your goal is to not need the dog. It is not a crutch that you can lean on for the rest of his life. Your goal is to continue moving forward and recovering and get to the point where you no longer need the dog. And one concern is that if the person is using that dog as a total crutch and everything, and thinks in their head they can't go on without the dog, then when the dog dies, because it's going to happen, then that could take a person that had already previously been suicidal and now push them over the edge, because how's he going to go on without the dog, but I took that to heart, and used that to push me that in my recovery, that I needed to get to the point where I did not need him to do what he was trained to do. And I got to that point, and I actually retired him a few years ago, and was able to go on with my life and function and do everything, without him. And I mean, that's got to make this easier. If I was at this point, now that he's gone, if I was still at this point totally dependent on him, and then now he's gone, man, I don't know. It would be a bad, bad situation. But I'm gonna miss him. It's gonna be a different world. But and with losing both the dogs, especially so close together, lost Ricka April 1st, and then Brooks July 14th. And there were two different situations. We'd known for a year at some point this was going to happen with Brooks, and we found out April 14th, 2 weeks after Ricka died, that Brooks probably would not make it through the summer. And then over them last couple of days before Friday, we had a couple of little conversations that, he's not going to be around much longer. And then Friday he went downhill really quick, and Monday we had to end it. But with Ricka, when she died, there was no warning. She was doing good. We were hanging out in the garage a little bit. We decided to get up to go to bed, and then all of a sudden Ricka wasn't doing good, and we rushed her a couple hours away up to St. Louis to try to save her. Couldn't save her. But what had happened with Ricka was she had a certain kind of tumor. It's kind of common. I'd never heard of it, but it's kind of common. And one of the bad things about it is that there's really no signs that the dog has these tumors and this particular kind of tumor until it ruptures. And it's usually in the kidney or spleens or something. And so then when it ruptures, they bleed out internally. And even if they can save the dog at the moment, all the research we did afterwards, finding out about it, that they usually only last 2 or 3 weeks, even if they survive that initial rupture and surgery and everything. So the difference with Ricka, she was fine, and she wasn't. Brooks, we had some warning. We knew it was coming. We're not ready to face it so soon after losing Ricka, but we still knew it was coming. And one way is not easier than the other, not having a warning and then, or versus having a warning that it's going to happen. But I'd say her situation was harder to deal with because it was such a shock, man, such a shock. She was 100%, everything was good to go, and then a couple hours later she was gone. And we just were not prepared. We knew because of her age, she was 12, would have been 13 in a few months, but we knew her because of her age, her days were numbered. But I definitely think that was harder to deal with. It's still harder to deal with. That just shocked to the system. At least with Brooks, we kind of knew that time was coming. But man, two great dogs. There's so many stories I could tell about Brooks and Ricka too. A lot of stories about her too, but I just wanted to have this video to look back on from time to time, and I'm going to share it if anybody wants to waste over an hour of their life probably at this point. And that's 51 minutes, and then a couple of little clips I got to splice in. So if anybody wants to take the time to watch it, feel free. But my main purpose in making this is just so I can look back upon it, remember some of the good times. I guess I didn't talk about a lot of the good times on the video, but just the way he was, man. Man, his training was so good. We were at a family reunion kind of thing a couple years ago out of my dad's house, and a bunch of people, aunts and uncles, were all sitting at this picnic table and stuff, and me and a few other people were sitting at one of the other smaller tables. But I had Brooks up in a place situation up here on the other end of them, kind of out of the way, and I don't remember if I used his placemat or something else, but I had given him that place command. And when I got done eating, I threw my plate away. I just walked around the table, so I was in eyesight with him, all I did was I just kind of looked at him and I went like this, and he got up and tromped over here to me, and we walked off, and I took him out in the yard to use the bathroom, and everybody whispering, "Did you see that? He didn't even say anything to the dog," and the dog, man, we had so many whispers like that of people seeing him and everything, and wow, I can't believe, and he impressed and surprised a lot of people. And we had, this happened a couple of times, man. He was so good at reading. This is the last thing that I'm going to stop the video. But he was so good at reading the situation or reading me. But we were down in Atlanta, out behind this truck stop. We found a little road, and then the road turned into a trail, and we're walking along, and we're kind of circling back. Oh, that reminds me of another story. But we're kind of circling back, and I noticed this. It was like a fence line, because it was perfectly horizontal and everything, and there was a gap in it, but it was all grown up with vines and stuff. And I thought, maybe it's a little 4-foot chain link fence that had been up there, but it seemed kind of weird. I mean, there were a lot of big trees, whatever was there had to have been a long time ago, and so he walked through the opening. He was a little ahead of me. And he walked through the opening, and then I walked through, and then I seen that the fence was actually pallets that somebody had wired up and everything to make a fence. And then off to my left, there was a hut that this guy had made out of, it was big enough to stand up in and everything, and have a bed in there and stuff. But so some homeless dude had been taking, truck stops. There's always some truck driver, has some leftover pallets. He's got to get rid of them and everything, and just dumps them out the back. So this guy must have been collecting pallets, and he eventually built this place up. But so right as I was realizing, and Brooks was heading towards the hut, and I was realizing what the situation was, and I heard that guy kind of coughing in there, and I was like, oh crap, man, I don't know anything about this dude. I don't know who he is, what he is, or anything, and we need to get out of here. So, and this is all happening in a couple seconds, and Brooks, he's still about 10 feet away from the hut, and he kind of looks over at me out of the corner of my eye, and I was like, come here. I didn't say anything, but I was like this. And there's a couple of times I did that exact same thing, but he was so good at reading the situation. He kind of crunched down. He was like almost like he was tiptoeing out of there, like, oh crap, let's go. But just for me, kind of leaning down and just reading the vibe and whatever I was setting off, and that, just doing that, he's like, oh, and kind of steaming out of there. And man, he was good at reading the situation, or reading me, or whatever, man. He was good at that. But and the story I thought about when I was circling around, we ran across so many, everybody, oh, this beautiful, cute little dog. We got in so many situations. Like when we was hauling coal, there was a lot of bobcats down by the river where we'd take the coal to the river. And one time we kind of got delayed. They were having some problems, and instead of just running down there and dumping and leaving, there was a line that kind of formed. So I had some time to kill, so I got him out. And he ended up jumping a bobcat. I think that's what I said. That's what I meant. Down by the river, there's a lot of bobcats. I don't think I said mountain lions, but bobcats. He jumped a bobcat, and he was just ahead of me, and I seen him take off, and this bobcat took off and went up the tree, and I'm kind of realizing, oh crap, that's a bobcat, and the bobcat is kind of realizing I'm a bobcat, and I don't need to run from you. And he turned around and started coming back down the tree, and I was like, oh Brooks, come on, it's time to go, and got him back, and we got away from the cat and everything. But man, a lot of situations like that. Just circling back around, uh, we were up somewhere up north, and they had a big bear statue out there and stuff, and we had crossed this fence, and we went down this little road, and we got to this point, and then Brooks just stopped, and I looked around, and I thought he was pooping or something, and I looked, and he was just standing there looking, and I was like, come on. And he's like, no, it's not a good idea. And I was like, oh, come on, let's go. And he took a few steps, and he's kind of looking at me like, dude, I'll come with you, but this is not good. And so I was kind of getting that vibe off of him, and then I stopped, and it's like, he obviously knows something I don't know, and so I better trust him. And so we turned around and started walking back, and I was like, I should have just trusted him and just left it at that. But I was like, maybe, I don't know, just kind of go double check this. So instead of coming back up the trail, I circled around through the woods, and then he was all just puppy dog, checking everything out. And when we got back up near that area, he stopped again. He's like, no, dude, I told you it's not, we shouldn't go up there. And so then the second time that happened in the same area, I was like, okay, yeah, there's something is there. And so we went back, got through the fence again, and I just let him play there, and the truck stopped for a while, and then we went back inside. I was getting ready to go to bed, went inside to use the bathroom and stuff, and I asked the cashier, I said, are there any bears here? And she said, no, there's no bears. And I said, well, you had the statue out front and everything. I said, that doesn't mean there's bears, but maybe there. And I said, we went out there on the other side of the fence out there, and there was something, a dog just was picking up that he didn't like and everything. And she said, you went on that other side of that fence? And I said, yeah. And she said, the one that's got the no trespassing signs on it? I said, just a couple boys out exploring, if somebody says don't go there, we're going to go there, I mean, heck. And she laughed, and she said, no. She said, I don't know what it was, but it wasn't. She said, we don't have any bears that I know of. And I said, well, there's something out there that, I said, he ain't really afraid of anything, but there's something out there that he don't want to mess with. And there was a time in Missouri, we'd been out playing, and everything went good, and we got back in the truck, started driving down the road. The truck stop parking was here. We were out here in the woods playing, and then we got in the truck and got back on the highway and went down. We didn't even make it a couple hundred yards past out of the truck stop. And off there to the right in the field was a full-grown mountain lion walking towards where we had just been. I was like, holy crap, I didn't even think there was mountain lions. It was not a bobcat, it was a mountain lion. I didn't think there was mountain lions in this part of Missouri. And then I started talking to some people that I knew from that area, and they were like, oh yeah. And then a short time later, a month or two later, I saw a dead mountain lion in that same area, on the road that had been hit. So that was a close call. Well, I mean, you think of the potential. That mountain lion wasn't very far away from us, and it was heading to right where we were at. So the potential that we could have crossed paths, and that was kind of scary. And ran across a wolverine one time, northern Indiana, close to the Michigan border. And I had to start Googling stuff and asking some people, are there Wolverines? And yeah, there are Wolverines up there. But he took off. We were out in the field running around, and he took off after something. And so I'm kind of looking, and I see what he's going after, and I see it. It's a Wolverine, and there was this little creek only about this wide in between it and Brooks, and that Wolverine, he was walking this way, and Brooks was coming towards him, and that Wolverine just turned and sat right there, stood right there, facing Brooks. Brooks coming right at him. And then as Brooks was getting close, and this is all happening in a couple seconds, he's running towards it. I'm looking to see what it is. I see what it is. It clicks in my head. It's like, oh no, I got to call Brooks back. This is all happening right at the same time. But right as I start to call him, Brooks is getting really close to that creek, and the Wolverine's not running. And Brooks is kind of realizing, wait a minute, this thing's not running from me. I'm a big old dog, and this thing's not scared of me. And Brooks kind of starts slowing down, and right about that time, he hears me hollering at him, and he looks at the Wolverine, and Brooks is like, you're lucky, fella, because he's calling me. If he wasn't calling me, I'd come over there and tear you up. But really, in reality, Brooks was a little scared, because like, this thing's, what's up with this thing? It's not running from me. That Wolverine would have messed him up, man. So I got lucky on that. Brooks got sprayed by a skunk. Oh, man. Oh, that was horrible. Oh, that was horrible. He got sprayed by a skunk. And I had some skunk stuff you put on them after they get skunked. But what I hadn't thought about was the only water source. I was at this gas station, I had truck parking. The only water source was a water spigot outside of the building, and it was only about this high off the ground. I couldn't even get like a gallon of water underneath it, it was so low. So I'm out there again, 3 o'clock in the morning. I'm trying to you got to put all this stuff on them first before you get it wet, and then I'm trying to rinse them off, and I got my gallon jug is turned sideways, so I'm not getting much water in there at all at a time, and I dump it. It was horrible. So now I got a dog that smells like a cross between a skunk and a wet dog. So that just made it worse. And then the gas station is not open, and I have some like wet wipes in the truck. I always used to kind of clean him up a little bit before we went inside. They were no help. And then I had to get to my store. I was delivering Polaris's at the time. I had to set up these ramps and then drive them off the ramps. I'm at the first store. They're not open yet. I'm offloading. I'm getting the last one. It slips between the 2 ramps, and it's just hanging there. So now I'm thinking, okay, my dog smells like a wet dog and a skunk. My truck, it's a small space when you got a dog that smells like that. And now this happened. Now I'm going to get fired. I'm losing my job, and it all worked out. I didn't lose my job and everything. But so then after that, one thing I learned in the Army is you never give out any more information than other than what exactly they asked for, and that's what saved my job. But so then left that store, going to the other store, was able to get to a place, and they had some horrible potpourri air freshener stuff and some other kind of cleaning stuff, and everything I added to this thing just made it smell worse. And it was Wednesday. I wasn't getting home again until Friday. It was Wednesday, and oh, that truck smelled so horrible. Luckily, I had some extra blankets, old blankets, and I put them on the bed and the floor, so hopefully you wouldn't get the smell soaked into the, oh man, it was bad. And on the way back, there was a PetSmart or Petco or something, and I was thinking, okay, they have baths. I can stop there and get a bath. Yeah, I don't really have much time, but I got to do this because it was horrible. And so we get to Petco, and guess what? Wednesdays is the one day of the week where they do not have the wash open. Yeah, figures. And I got some other dog wipes and stuff while I was there, and I explained the situation. Can you just open it up? And they're no. There's one person that runs that, and they're off on Wednesdays. I didn't get home until Friday, and holy cow, man! Oh man, it was bad. That smell. Oh my god! And we had to live in it, because I mean you're living in the truck while you're there. You can't get away from it. It was bad. After that, I started carrying. I his kit grew over the years. It started out with like a small first aid kit, and that grew because of different things that had happened, and it's toys and water, and then the skunk thing, and lotion, wash stuff, and then after that little spigot and everything, it's like, okay, now I got to start carrying a water hose with me. So in that situation, I could have really hosed him off real good, but man, it was always something, man. And the close calls with the bobcat and the wolverine and you know, could have ended up having that encounter with that mountain lion, and everybody's, oh, he's such a sweet little dog, and it's like, this dog is gonna get me killed one of these days, man. It's a threat to my life to live with him, but oh man, we had so many good times, so many good times. And I'm just gonna leave the video here at this because, like I said, I can make it a 6-hour video, but that's my final thought for the video. We had so many good times.